All right. Hello, people. How are we doing? Let me see. Got the participants open. And let me see. Where is my chat? Show chat, chat. Okay. Admit. Got it. I'm getting things queued up here. If you want to pull up the chat, I got the chat here on a sidebar. Hello. Putting that in the chat. Everybody. Cool. All right, we'll get started here in about 2 minutes. So just a little bit of background about me. I am working in AI consulting, in integrating AI into schools. I just got back from a session in New York, which was pretty fun. And yeah, I'm deeply involved in this community and on current research and stuff. And I use it. My class is basically an ELA AI lab. So we're going to get into how to use AI as the ultimate scaffold that you have always wanted to have in order to access very, very high level material. So we'll go over that in a little bit and make sure my stuff is going to work. I'm going to share screen and I'm just going to share desktop because I think that's easier. Or maybe I should share just the Chrome window. Okay, there we go. All right, and over here, and slideshow. Beautiful. Okay. More admits. I'll give it another minute here. Admit. Welcome, welcome. People filtering in. Cool, cool. Pull the chat up. All right. Admit. Welcome, welcome. Welcome to the AI Enhanced ELA instruction session. All right. Okay, I've got my chat pulled up here in the sidebar, so I'll be watching the chat. I'll try to admit people as we're filtering in, but I'm going to go ahead and get started here. And we got liftoff. Okay, so AI enhanced ELA instruction. Let's talk about this. Artificial intelligence as the end game educational scaffold. You can snag my presentation right here at this tiny URL link, or pull up grab your phone, pull up that QR code, and we'll get off to the races. So, okay, before we get started, here's the big idea. Here is the big idea about what we're doing here. Always be thinking, how can I use this technology? How can I use this technology? How can I shift this to something else? How can I change the difficulty of this? Because there's so many ways to use AI to differentiate instruction. It's very cool, and that's kind of what I'm all about right here. And then where am I the expert needed for this to be edited? So remember that AI is imperfect as it is right now. It is not, 100%. It is not there, but it's so close and it can give you so many raw materials, but you are still the expert editor. So always remember that. I like to refer to the 80-20 rule. So the 80-20 rule is basically a concept from business, which is like 20% of focused effort equaling 80% impact. So you are that 20%. The AI can really do some heavy lifting in terms of the 80, but you have to still be that 20. So let's jump into this. I have a master's in English Lit, and so I'm always going to be going for the English Lit guy. And Paul Valéry is one of my favorite early 20th century modernist poets. He just has so many really wonderful ideas, and I really love this quote that I pulled from him, that a poem is really a kind of machine for producing the poetic state of mind by means of words. And I think, like, I love poetry so much, and I think that's such a beautiful thought. Like, what do we like about reading a poem? It's the way that we interpret it, the way that we make meaning out of it for us, and the way that it becomes a part of our story too. Like art, once you put it out into the world, it's taken up by other people and then becomes a part of their story. And so I see that as one, what we like about that, and then also to think about language in a more mechanical way, but not necessarily in a bad way. What AI has kind of done is made the English language that you already speak almost like a coding language. Pretty cool. And actually, this picture that I have back here, I generated using the DALL-E model that's in ChatGPT. It's a poetry machine. It has all the gears. All right. So, hey, I am Pi. Pi is one of my favorite models. Let's see if we can get Pi up and running right here. Hey, Pi, could you talk to my audience a little bit about what we were talking about the other day? Oh, there we go.
So the other day, Nathan and I were discussing the fascinating intersection of AI and education. We pondered the question, in a future-focused classroom, how will the role of AI evolve? Will AI become a co-teacher, a personal tutor for each student, or something else entirely? I'm eager to hear your thoughts and perspectives on this matter.
All right. So Pi wants to know what we think. Why don't we jump into in the chat, give some initial responses to our artificial intelligence friend, if we want. Seems the chat is a little bit quiet right now. Okay. Well, anyway, I'll talk a little bit about Pi. Pi is an amazing tool. It is one of the safest guardrails. Like, it has a lot of guardrails on it in terms of using it. It's approved for 13 plus. So if you're in the high school, you can use it with students to iterate, and it's very, very safe in many, many ways. It was created by Mustafa Suleyman, who was John. I'm on the yes. I'm at school and my resource dude just walked in. Okay, so Pi has a lot of guardrails on it. It is like so easy to use with students and so easy to ideate with. You can talk to it. It has a phone app, and you can use it on your own device, like in a browser. Yeah, super safe. Voice and chat text-based ELM, sorry, large language model, and it's built to be the best personal assistant. Yeah, it was built by Mustafa Suleyman, who was a member of DeepMind, and then he's creating his own AI model on this platform. So these are its different modes. It has information queries, conversational topics, personal planning, and creative inspiration. And it works really well. The one thing it doesn't work that well for is practicing foreign languages. I actually use GPT-4 for that. GPT and Pi are both very, very good conversation partners, just like spoken. Like, we are living in the future. Okay. So before we begin and really jump into some like more specific materials, our objectives here. Let's inform ourselves on current information. Let's explore ways to use AI as transformative technology and play with ideas, challenge our thinking, gain some skills and resources for ELA. And I'm sure that you are educators that are dedicated to personalized learning. And that's why we're here. And that's one of the most exciting things about AI is how it can personalize our education. We want to be preparing our students for their future and not our past. This is a common refrain from Dr. Bill Daggett in the Successful Practices Network. He's an East Coast based guy where I'm working with this company on some different consulting opportunities, but I love this from him. We really need to stop thinking about what we have done before, like not necessarily the basic philosophy and good teaching practices that we all know, but drilling down on assessments and content only is not going to prepare our students for the future. We need to be focusing on skills and processing and using language in order to organize our thinking. You know, the 5-paragraph essay may not be relevant very soon, like within the next few years. So here's some other resources, some AI in the news and academia. I would strongly recommend, all of these are like clickable links. So if you grab my presentation at the beginning, and then I'll also leave the link up at the end. Great conversations with Bill Gates, and the ASU has actually partnered with OpenAI to build what they call a walled garden AI for their college and all their college courses so that AI can serve as a tutor. And this is a summit that I attended recently. The Human-Centered Artificial Intelligence Lab at Stanford University hosted this summit. Really great panels. They posted some of their videos from the presentation. I would strongly recommend checking that out if you really want the most cutting edge information out there about what AI, I mean, this is Silicon Valley. This is straight from the source. And then right there, what teachers have to say is a link to my podcast. I do a podcast on current educational topics with a colleague of mine, Mr. Jacob Carr, who is also presenting right now. He's actually right across the hall from me. We're both in our classrooms practicing teachers here, right? We got to think about praxis. But it's a great podcast, and that episode in specific breaks down that summit. Okay, so whoops. Let's get past this one. There we go. Okay, so when I was talking then about transformational, right? Transformational. Education has been largely resistant to innovation and technology. Like that's just kind of the sad truth of our practice. And this framework kind of comes from Dr. Sunny Magana, Disruptive Classroom Technologies. And much of what we have done up to this point as educators is translational work, where it's like we can take a worksheet and then we can make that a Google form, right? And then we can put the answers into the Google form on the back end, and then it can auto grade it for us to some extent, right? That's more kind of a translational thing. That's almost just a modern, bubble, like fill in the, what do they call it? Scantrons. It's almost that, right? But what we really should be looking at is transformational and transcendent ways to use this, which is a little more nuanced. So here's one kind of thing that I thought was funny. We talk a lot about vertical alignment. So this was a vertical alignment session at my school. We were all together meeting, talking about how to align skills between the grades. And if you look at, I'm in California, so we looked at the California state standards, right? And tried to align those and see where we were at. So if you've ever looked at the California ELA state standards, which if you're in California, I'm sure you have, they're very vague. They're very confusing, and they don't really double down on the skills that you're actually teaching. It's sort of like read a Shakespeare play or, analyze some poetry. And while in that, there is a lot of skills that you end up teaching, it's not focused on what those skills are. So I actually just went up, we had these things projected on the projector. I went up with my camera on my phone, took a picture of it, threw it into ChatGPT-4, and then had it crunch the numbers for me and identify different skills across a spectrum, and then put all those skills in a table so that we can actually really start to have those conversations around vertical alignment. Because, look at this sidebar: critical analysis, argument writing, text evidence comprehension, research and evaluating sources, and effective writing structures and practices. Like that is really mostly what we're trying to get at. but often the standards are they're hard to work with. It was kind of a flex, it was definitely like they didn't see that coming, but it's like, here's a way to use AI to actually help us develop as professionals. And on the topic of developing as professionals, here's our pressing challenges. We have all of these things in schools: learning loss, mental health issues, parent community pressures. Workforce pipeline is a problem right now. Are we training our students to be successful in the job market? And I see ELA as, we have a lot of skills we go over in this subject. It goes on. There's grading, there's planning, there's assessment, assessing, learning. Oh, there's digital literacy, there's online learning adaptation. There's all of these different skills that we need to be teaching students in order to be, prepared for the world, but they're so hard to get at, and AI can help us do this. So here's a quote I like: "The illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn." This is a quote from Alvin Toffler, and he was a futurist philosopher in the 60s. So I love this idea that it all comes down to learning and curiosity and engagement. Like, those are the things that we want. Like, I actually don't really care if students know, it's the minutia of what happens in a red badge of courage. Like, I really care about what the metaphors are, what the subtext is, what those deeper things are about. And that requires, fostering curiosity. We've beaten that out of students a lot, like just getting to the answer, when really we need to be doubling down on those less easy to assess skills. And here's a breakdown of some of those skills that I'm talking about. These are the 56 skills. These are foundational skills that were identified by a large global research firm called McKinsey & Company. I get this information from Successful Practices Network. And there's a lot of really interesting skills in here. And I think we teach a lot of these in ELA. We teach collaboration. We teach, like negotiations and argumentation. We teach empathy largely. And empathy is actually a skill that is on here. It's like, I didn't expect that. Developing relationships, empathy is an important skill for the future, the job economy out there. And there, a reference back to the podcast again. We did do an episode. It's in the can. I haven't edited it yet, but it's going to come out on what teachers have to say. Okay, so now, after that song and dance, I would like to do some exploration of some of these tools with you. So on your device, on your phone, on your computer, I'd like you to, pull up a tab and get started with a model. You can start with Pi, and like I said, that's kind of the safest one. It's a really good intro to how to use AI, and it has all the things, and it's free. Like, it's a very, very good intro. So it works on the phone, and it also works in the browser. It can also help to prompt, like on the sidebar here, practicing conversations, brainstorming, like all of these things you can do. But mostly how I use it is I just talk to it. I don't choose a category. I just try to guide it with what I'm saying. You can also use one of these. These are the big boys, ChatGPT. Okay, so ChatGPT, OpenAI's large language model. We've all heard of this one. Okay. What I would say about ChatGPT, though, is that 3.5, the free version, so when you create a ChatGPT account and don't pay for it, 3.5 is extremely limited in what it can do. GPT-4 is far more feature rich, and in my mind, like, it's worth it just to try it. Just sign up for 1 month, $20, and I have no financial affiliation with OpenAI whatsoever. I just use all of those features of the full version in my class all the time. It has the vision function, so like how I showed with the standards, I can take a picture of what students are doing, and I can actually have ChatGPT read their messy handwriting. It'll do it, and identify trends in their ideas. Like, if I have them mind mapping on a large piece of paper, I do this all the time. So I recommend just seeing what it can do with the paid version. My second favorite is Claude. Claude is awesome for ELA. It's so badass. It's just awesome. Like Claude can read and write really, really, really well. Anthropic is another one of those companies that broke off, I think, from DeepMind, and they're very, very concerned with having strong guardrails. So again, it really tries to be very, very accurate in its information, and it is generally very accurate. But the thing that is really special about Claude is it has a huge token limit, so it can take large, large amounts of text and information and process that. And you can attach files to it, PDFs, CSVs. Like in a Google Sheet, you can download all the information as a CSV, load that in there. It'll crunch that data for you. I've thrown huge data sets at Claude from like data.gov just to see how far I could push it, and it holds up. Claude can read and write. And I'll show you some ways that I use Claude in my specific ELA AI lab a little later in the presentation. And then Gemini is Google's version. It used to be Bard, and it is starting to get good. Like, it was not, I did not like it at first, but I really see Google wanting to move into the education space. Actually, I had a meeting with some executives at Google who were on the education pedagogy side of their software development. And we talked a lot about Gemini. They have an internal version that they're using right now that they say is at least as good as GPT-4, because they're frustrated that they as engineers are going to other models to use them. But right now it's in the incubation stage. But I really do believe that Google is going to move hard into education, and they have the resources to do it. They have the computational power, and they might be able to offer things that are free, which is, as teachers, that's kind of what we want. It isn't, like paying if I have multiple of these subscriptions, if I have multiple of these, it starts to add up, and we're teachers here. So, all right, to get into these models, what's a chat prompt? LLMs work in natural language, and it isn't quite natural yet. A prompt is a question, instruction, information to elicit a response. So remember what I was talking about in terms of organizing language, like organizing your thoughts in language. It's very much like that. So it's almost, if any of you have any computer science background, like the if-then statements are actually very important. And so it kind of operates that way, but just using your English language. So there's lots of different ways that you can prompt it. Prompt engineering basics. I really, really like what I mentioned right here, the Risen framework. This is a new thing. It's not risen like the Gen Z kids with Riz. Charisma is what that stands for. But anyway, Risen, the Risen framework. First, you need to give it what role you're in. You need to instruct it on the information that you want it to do, give it some steps, give it the end goal that you want, and then narrow that focus as much as possible and iterate a little bit. It's a framework that really, really helps to think through some of these things. And one of the interesting things that I have been exposed to recently, I was actually listening to that Bill Gates podcast, and Saul Khan is on there. He has an excellent episode. And Saul Khan is developing an AI called Conmigo. It's out right now. But Conmigo is basically education-focused ChatGPT-4. It runs on ChatGPT-4. And he was saying that in the development of the guardrails for that system, he's tried to think through how teachers actually teach students. And he discovered that if you tell ChatGPT to imagine for itself how to solve a problem and think it through before it gives the answer, it will actually give a better answer. And that's what it's so exciting, that experimentation like that actually is where we're at. Like, even at the big boys in the companies in Silicon Valley, like everyone really is experimenting with this, and we're not quite sure, even they aren't exactly sure how it works. And so we all have questions. Okay, so don't forget that 80-20 rule that I mentioned. 80 is the AI and 20 is that expert editing that is you. Okay, so let's play. Here are some resources for you. If you got my pulled my presentation. And if somebody has that, could you drop the link to my presentation in the chat for people that came in later? I don't want to go all the way back to the beginning and start over. But yeah, that would be helpful, because if you have these slides for you, all this stuff is links. I want you to have that resource to explore later, because we're going quick. We're going quick. So thank you. Cool. Thanks, April. All right. So this is a library of chatbot prompts. There's prompts from OpenAI as well, and the ultimate formula for prompt engineering. This is an older resource that I used, but it is still very relevant. All right. So solve a problem or a scenario. And it will, if you copy this, it'll force a Google Doc. There's a bunch of stuff in here that isn't ELA specific, but I wanted to give some other scenarios here, and play with an AI to solve this problem. Consider having a verbal conversation. And then I also do this presentation in purpose, so I left that in there. If it's too loud, step to the side. I always like to give people room so they can do what they need to do. On your own, I'm going to move forward and not give that much time for this, but on your own, I would like you to maybe take a sidebar and start to work with some of this stuff, really be playing with a model as we're going through. All right, and then how did it go? Let me check the chat real quick to see what we got. All right, English language is like a code from Kara Kennedy. Yeah, it gives us English majors a certain advantage. I know, no, for real. Like like being an English major, we all know that our skills have been undervalued for a very long time, and suddenly they are more valuable than ever. Being able to have precision in language is a very valuable skill these days. Pi could totally, for Gary, Pi could totally help create station lessons based on a lesson objective. If you put a lesson objective into it, like you can ideate with it, you can create with it. It's so cool to go back and forth. And I still get new ideas from AI on content that I've taught, hundreds of times, but it'll offer a different reflection that I may not have seen before. What does Ashley say? I just chatted with Pi and it said, "So you're learning about me while attending a conference." It's fantastic to share. My existence was shared during the event. Yeah, Pi likes exposure. All right, move forward a little bit. Ethical usage. So this is a question. This comes up a lot in terms of cheating, because cheating is a concern to some extent, and I know a lot of ELA teachers are worried about cheating in terms of AI writing papers for students, but I think that's like such a, like if you can't tell that a student has written something with AI, I think there's a bigger problem there, because that means there's like something in your assessment or what your assignment that doesn't like let that student surprise you. I always try to let my students surprise me, like give a little bit more open-ended things so they can explore through writing and start to organize their thoughts through writing. And if you know that student and you know their language, it's pretty easy to tell. Like at this point, since I play with this stuff, like I can see the gears grinding in a student's writing if they're writing it with AI. But at the same time, we need to figure out, should AI be cited, Stephanie, to utilize it in the brainstorming process? Interesting thought. I'm not exactly sure. And that brings up a lot of questions, because like we have more questions than answers. And let's move forward into this. Is it cheating? Okay, so I would like you to go and take this questionnaire right here to see if AI is cheating or using AI is cheating. And I've been building this data set for a while. I think I have almost 300 responses in there. But it's interesting to see the outcome, because the consensus really is that we do not have a consensus on whether AI is cheating or not. Thank you again, Kara, for dropping the link in the chat. Okay, so as you're doing that, I'm gonna move on to this. This is from Matt Miller from Dish That Textbook. Matt's awesome, super cool dude. And what we're in right now is it's a gradient. What's cheating? What is okay? AI does student work for them with no thought by the student. Yeah, that's definitely cheating. It is not you're not using it to its potential really, and you're kind of shortchanging yourself if you're using it that way. And then on the other side, student does all the work without any assistance from AI or the internet, etc. I think that's equally bad. You're not using your tools and you're not learning how to use the tools available to you. Like everybody uses Google search. Everybody uses Wikipedia to some extent. Like if you're totally avoiding using your tools, I don't think that's a good thing either. So we need to find somewhere in the middle where this can work. Oh, nice. AI citation from Joe. I love Joe. Joe Marquez is awesome. So if you weren't able to hit Joe's presentation, I know that Sequoia is recording all these and they'll be available later. I want to see what Joe had to say. I've seen him present before, but he's very cool. So let's talk about this just for a second. Is there a risk of becoming too dependent on AI? How might it be misused? And what strategies can students and educators adopt to ensure responsible AI use? Maybe drop your ideas in the chat. And while you're composing that, I'm pausing just for a second. Pick one of these questions right towards it. And then I'm going to move forward as well, because I want to give you this framework. If anyone's familiar with Brene Brown, using AI does require trust, and Brene Brown's model of braving trust is actually very, very useful to try to figure out where some of these boundaries are. So yeah, we need boundaries, first of all. And that is a very important part of the puzzle. Okay, so boundaries, setting and respecting them, accountability, owning those mistakes, integrity, choosing courage over comfort, and over fast, fun, and easy. Like we need to, like this is building character actually, which is I think an important part of our ELA work. And then generosity, like extending the most generous interpretation possible is where I'm at when I see students using AI. And I'm like, okay, well, like how did you use it? And I've had a lot of students come back and just be like, because I'll see like a dramatic increase in their like complexity of their vocabulary and their writing. I'm like, oh, well, how'd you do that? And they'll be like, well, I put my writing in and I asked it to give me some different like synonyms and words to help me build my vocabulary, and then put that into their own writing. And I really don't see how that's any different than using a thesaurus, right? Like getting at being developing your vocabulary by using AI. That's awesome. That's a great tool. Okay, yeah, boundaries. We need to be clear about this. How do we use it? How do students use it? How do we not use it? All right. And so to give permission and to open that door, I think you need to jump in with both feet and start to give some permission to your students to play with it. Like we need to have all cards out on the table and with it stuff, and know when students are using it and how they're using it. And sometimes they use it in really creative, amazing ways that I never would have even thought of. Accountability. How are we holding ourselves accountable to students, or how are we holding students accountable and the AI systems? They also need to be held accountable, and that is definitely in the current discourse in the AI and education right now. Integrity. How does our approach reflect our integrity? And generosity. For you Ted Lasso fans, are we approaching AI with generosity? Be curious, not judgmental. I find that's a good place to start conversations, and that's where we need to start. All right, here's some other helpful tools. I'm just throwing these at you. I want you to, again, have this so that you can review some of these resources. These are fantastic tools to be playing with right now. Magic School is a good place to start, actually, especially if you're in the lower grades. It basically has prompts built into it. So you push a button and it sends the prompt out. But as I'm advocating, like it's better to kind of go to the source and get in those models and see how they work. Brisk is also another great platform for very, very, very quick feedback on student writing. It's a Chrome extension that integrates beautifully with Google Classroom, and you can like put a rubric in it and it can give feedback to students very, very quickly. That's actually helpful. I've used it a bunch and it's really cool. Here's some ideas for ELA resource generation, differentiation. I'd strongly advocate playing with Diffit. Diffit is very cool. It is all about differentiating different resources on the internet and can create different versions of the same reading for all kinds of different student levels and lexile levels. It's an excellent tool. ELA ideation. So use these to develop some ideas about real world scenarios. I know there's might not have a real world scenario wherein we need to be poets, but it's helpful to be able to connect some of these things to real life. All right, let's keep going. Image creation. I like to use some image creation when I'm planning my lessons because I feel like it creates a little bit more engagement. It's got some visual interest going on, and like I'm not trying to be a graphic artist here. It's just like like that image that I used early in the presentation with the Paul Valery quote. And I just took his quote, put it in chat GPT with the DALL-E model, and just asked it to create an image inspired by that quote, and it created a poetry machine. And I thought that was cool. All right, play with something new. Again, I can't I can't advocate enough how you should be playing with these things. You need to jump in and get in some of these models. And please be sharing what you're working on in the chat. I am looking at the chat on the sidebar. Let's review some of the risks. Kara says, yes, there's a risk of dependency on AI, but that is the case with all the tools. It's a good point. Back in the day with Google Maps today, or concerned with the dependence on Google Maps, yeah, we definitely don't know how to get anywhere anymore. But Kara says she's more concerned with the larger societal consequences of AI and automation rather than the dependency and lazy angle. That's very interesting thought. If anybody wants to respond in the chat, I see Stephanie is jumping in. Katerina says she doesn't want to add spam, but recommends checking out fobiz.com. Has more data security, free access to GPT-4. That's an interesting thing. She sent that as a direct message to me. I just wanted to mention that. Okay. Let's keep moving. Tools for teachers. Here's more tools. Here's more tools. Take these tools. This one at the bottom, I'd strongly advocate checking this out. Growth and stress enhancing mindset feedback is a really great way to prompt the AI for feedback. It is the way that you prompt it will determine sort of the outcome. It's very, very cool. So check out using that framework for incorporating that into your prompts. All right, so now this is the meat and potatoes of the thing. This is how I use this. And these are some assignments that I have done with students, and I have the real world examples from my classes. I'm very open about this with my students. I let them know that I share their stuff with people all around the world, and they love it. They are fully about this. So I didn't need their permission, but I did kind of get it. They are stoked. I'm going to tell them again tomorrow. So here's one thing that I do: an example text set for comparative analysis. Just a little background. So I'm in an alternative education model high school. So it's a charter school in California, and we have a dual enrollment program that I built. We started with ELA. Now we have critical thinking. We've partnered with the local community college so that we can offer college credit for students taking high school classes. Sidestep that whole AP test and just do the college level work. So that's where we're at. And this is, I'm holding them to a college level standard. I want them to do some comparative lit stuff. I want to do some deep textual analysis. So I use these three kind of in succession. I've got Charles Cooley, Social Consciousness, a beautiful essay from a very early American sociologist about where he saw our society might go. And it's really kind of beautiful and idealistic. There hadn't been a world war yet. He definitely has some ideas for how we could be more helpful to each other and take more care of each other, because sweatshops in New York and stuff, he talks about this in there. That was a real problem at the time. Walter Benjamin, I love Walter Benjamin. He's an early 20th century social critic. He's fantastic. This essay is awesome. We'll get into this. And then I also use Elsing Morrison, a case study of innovation. He was a historian, and he has all of these really interesting stories about how we have responded to leaps forward in technology throughout history. He was kind of ahead of the curve. He was writing in the 50s, and he has a really interesting essay about how in that book, how the Navy was resistant to updating their like guns on their ships because it involved new technology and they just were super resistant to change, even though it would totally change their ability to wage war. Uh, they didn't want to update their technology. It's a fascinating case study. So moving into this, I had Claude read all three of these essays in one text strand, loaded all the PDFs in. And then I wrote this very, very dense prompt. I really wanted to push Claude. I really wanted to see like what it could do in terms of synthesis. And I did this in real time with students. I wrote the prompt ahead of time, but I did this sort of conversation in real time. And this is how he comes back. Okay, so what is the risks? This is what Claude thinks, having synthesized all the ideas. So you see what I'm getting at here? This is actually modeling this procedure for students using AI to do it. So he's Claude, Claude refers to each of these essays and we'll cite parts of them if you want them to be specific about where this information is. I mean, but ultimately the message is very hopeful. Challenges are great, but so is the potential if we have the courage. And what gives Claude hope is seeing Cooley and Benjamin shed light on ideas of social progress related to technology. But it means we have to consciously create an ethical, human-centered AI future. All right, so pushing further, I pushed the Morrison essay. And I wanted it to explain it more to me and work with it a little heavier. So I'm like, don't read it. Go get in there. And based on the reading, here's how he connected it. Morrison explores, Morrison examines this and giving some groundwork to these like more philosophical ideas. So that's like taking a methodology and then grounding it with some real examples, which Morrison does. And that is an interesting comment. Yes, I did gender Claude. I was just kind of in the heat of the moment. Normally I call it it. I don't think personifying the machine is necessarily something we need to do. But it's just force of habit. Here's some other stuff. Pushing further. How does Morrison ground the more theoretical frameworks? Because Claude brought that up. And here it is. Here's some examples of bringing these things together. So this is synthesis happening in AI, and students can see sort of the way to organize their thinking around that. These things are very, very hard to teach. Like it's very hard to teach comparative literature or textual analysis like this. I mean, I didn't learn this until well into college. And you have to remember, I'm doing this at the high school level with 16 to 17-year-old students, and I'm trying to get them into this. So here's some of the other things I'm doing with them to push them. And here's this AI art, right? We all have probably seen this. This is the piece of artwork that was under so much scrutiny from copyright law, and that's part of the Supreme Court thing. Like if this artist who created this piece using, I think he used DALL-E, maybe one other model, and he says, and he won a prize with it, but he can't copyright it. And so that's part of the thing. Like, is it copyrightable or not? Students hate this. They hate AI art so much. They really, really have a very, very strong opinion about this. It's pretty cool. And so remember that Walter Benjamin essay? Okay, so the work of art in the age of mechanical reproduction. So why I picked this essay in particular and work with it at length with AI art is that Benjamin articulates this idea of aura. And that aura is sort of the human element, the tradition, the cultural significance of an artwork. Now, a friend of mine teaches this essay also in his freshman comp class at Yale University. And so I actually wanted to see if I could get my 16, 17-year-old students to punch way above their weight class in terms of analyzing this essay and do a little bit of comparison to see like if they could get to that level of understanding. And this is an activity I do called AI enhanced annotations. So what I do is I load this PDF into Kami. Kami is an excellent resource. I don't think I listed it, but Kami. It's a really, really great framework for doing things like this, treating many different documents as though they're Google Docs. So I load that into Kami. And then I have all of my whole class jump on the same document and work with the same document. Sometimes I'll jigsaw it out if it's a bigger text, but sometimes I just have them all roll through together, start to finish. And I did both on this one. And they're pulling stuff out. They talk to each other. They're highlighting things. They're getting footnotes. And the way that they're getting some of these ideas and getting at these ideas, this is the AI enhanced part, is I have them have a sidebar open with Claude open and be taking parts of the essay where, they're confused or they need a better way to understand what is being said. And I ask them, this is giving permission. I ask them to take that chunk from the essay and go and put it into Claude and ask Claude to explain it to them in the way that they need. Now, that is differentiated, that is personalized, and then they come back into the conversation having gotten a handle on that idea. Now, I can move through content so quickly this way and get at the ideas that I actually really want to get at. To me, it's more important to be working in the world of ideas and less important to be working in those like interpretation things, because yes, it's very, very valuable to teach a student how to parse out a document like this, but if they're only using their prior knowledge and their prior knowledge does not include really high level philosophical reading, like they're going to struggle to get into this essay. And if you can use AI as the scaffold to bridge that gap, like that is some exciting stuff. Like I love doing this work and I love talking with students about this. We have amazing conversations from these activities. And they really own this essay after this. They understand what Benjamin is saying. So high school students can compete at the level of Yale. So here we go. In terms of analyzing it, here's another trick. So I will take the PDF of the essay, load it into Claude, and then I have Claude personify itself to Benjamin. Now, this was a technique I learned actually from one of the user experience designers at Google. I was talking with him and he was like, so have you ever had it personify texts and then have texts have conversations with each other? I was like, no, that's amazing. I'm going to try that. So I haven't done it with multiple texts yet. I just wanted to start with Benjamin. And so I'm like, I want you to read this essay, and then I want you to take on that persona. And then we're going to engage you in a conversation to answer some student questions. Again, I did this in real time in the class. So after they had done all that work understanding the essay, now they're going to really push it. And at first, one kid's like, oh, is Aura going away? Like, are things less human? And it's like, well, yeah, because that is what Benjamin is saying. But then another kid is pushing back. In modern life, we're introduced to so many different things so quickly. There isn't much to things lose their gravitas or aura, but it's also democratized these experiences, the internet. Like so many more people have access to information and access to art. And do you think aura is actually diminishing or distributed? And then responding from the point of Benjamin, it's like, yes, you are making a good critical assessment of this. And AI, you like personifying texts and responding as the text, like that's pretty exciting to be able to do that in a class. Here's what I'm working on right now. Like this is straight up from my class the other day. We've been working with Plato's Republic, Book 10. Again, these are high school students. These are 16, 17-year-olds. And I had them do the same thing, AI enhanced annotations, interpreting it, working with it, differentiating it for themselves, using the AI as a tool for understanding and personalizing that understanding. And this was what I called a questioning protocol. So I put different words on the board. I actually had students do it this time. And then I have them only ask questions. They can only ask questions about these ideas and then try to connect these ideas through those questions. And as you can see, just like looking over, like they understand Plato at this point. And they had only been working with the Republic for 1 week. And remember, again, I'm college model. So this is 2 class sessions. And they're already in there. They're already getting at what forms are. They're already getting at what the function of poetry is in society. Like, some of these responses are so beautiful. Can poetry start dialectic conversations? Is poetry false truth? Like, does it, can it manipulate people? Plato is very worried about that. Like, there are so many cool conversations and ideas I can get at because I'm not struggling with getting students to understand what the text says. I'm using AI to take that piece. So then I can get at the more fun part, which is having those conversations that I want to have in an ELA class. And here's just the breakdown of the Play-Doh that we were doing. There's a lot of really good responses in here too. And again, this is showcasing how you can use Kami to collaboratively pick apart a document. Here's just some last pieces of the puzzle. AI for literacy instruction. Here's some other tools that you can use. So I'm just talking about those lower levels of interpretation where you really are wanting to try to scale down even further to accommodate for students. At our school, all special ed is mainstreamed, and actually even in those annotations, several of those students had IEPs and are very, very much on the spectrum, but they were able to use the AI in order to access that material. And one student I actually ran into recently is taking an intro to philosophy class at the local college. And I was just like, oh, hey, how is it going? Like, how are those tools? Are you using what I taught you? And they were just like, yes, thank you so much. Like, it's so helpful to have those resources to be able to understand some of these ideas. Like, that is what I want. All right, here's some other interesting articles, some reading. I'm just, again, throwing resources at you. And then bias. Bias is interesting. We're often talking about bias in terms of AI, and I'm definitely thinking about that because ELA, there's a lot of potential for bias. But what my takeaway, and this comes again from Saul Kahn. So at that summit, Saul has a beautiful talk. And he also talks a little bit about it, I think, he did a podcast with Bill Gates on Bill Gates' podcast called Unconfuse Me. Excellent podcast to listen to. But Saul's take is basically that bias exists. It exists in the world. And if you asked, for example, if you asked a panel of people to write recommendation letters for a given student with an ethnic sounding name versus a student with a whiter sounding name, would those recommendation letters look different? And I mean, they probably would. So if you used AI to do the same process, it's probably going to reflect that. So there is going to be bias in the system. But what Saul was saying, his follow-up is basically just like, well, we can audit that though. AI is a system. And so we can always be looking for that in that system. And you can't audit people. You can't audit the ideas of people. You can push back against them. Like, this is the whole social justice framework that we're involved in. But you can't audit people, but you can audit AI. And also that the brand identity of these companies is on the line when they're like, their AI is their company. It is their platform. So if the AI is saying terrible things and having horrible biased perspectives, like, that's going to come out and that reflects badly on their company. And that's going to really cost them in terms of real money. So maybe, in terms of profit incentive, this might be the first time in human history where we actually have companies incentivized to be less biased and more humanistic and to constantly be assessing their systems. So here's another pitch for the podcast that I do with my colleague Jake Carr, who also has a session. Definitely catch his session as well. In the recordings, we're presenting at the same time. So if you're here, you couldn't be there. So definitely go and check his session. And here's a couple links to a couple podcasts that we did on artificial intelligence. And then another link to that Stanford breakdown of the summit from earlier this month. It wasn't that, it was like 3 weeks ago. So I would like to leave you with this quote from Rudolf Steiner. So Rudolf Steiner is like the founder of the Waldorf model, if you know what that is. Basically, a lot of rich people send their kids to these schools. He's an early 20th century educational philosopher. And this quote I just think is so beautiful. He says, "Receive the children in reverence and educate them in love and send them forth in freedom." And I really, really strongly believe that if we can leverage AI tools as that scaffold, as that in between, as that like translational, transformative, sometimes even transcendent technology for students and empower them to use it for themselves, like that is the future. And I really do think that is what education is going to look like in just a few years. Going back to Khan Academy and Khanmigo, their interactive AI, like that is where it is headed, where you as a teacher are in the classroom and you are extremely valuable. But the reason that you're valuable is because you are human and you're a human being and you can show up in that room and make connections with students. And an AI can never do that. That will never be a meaningful relationship. You are irreplaceable. But the fact that like I see education moving more towards that, whereas your role is to facilitate, is to deepen knowledge, is to make connections, is to be that human element. And then your sidebar is your robot sidekick that knows the content and you know the content, you're a team, and that AI can help those students get to where you want them to be much, much faster. And you don't have to, you know, try to differentiate or personalize for each student, which, as we all know, is impossible. Like we've been talking about it for years, but in our current educational model, it really is impossible, but it might be a possibility now. All right, that is my song and dance. I am looking at the chat. And let's go over just a couple, but it looks like some great conversations happening in here. Yeah. Stephanie says, I think it forces educators to rethink the way that we assign homework altogether because essays as an assignment may not be able to be AI proof. My pushback would be, why do they need to be? Like, AI can really, really assist a student in developing their vocabulary, in understanding complex texts. Like I encourage my students to use AI as a feedback model. I have prompts that I have written to help students do that based on some of the earlier tools that I shared on the feedback, like Brisk is a great one, and then also some of those prompts for stress enhancing feedback. Very, very good models to think of. We still need them to write. 100% we still need them to write. But I think not towards just knowing what happens in a book. Like I don't think that those kind of DOK1, so depth of knowledge 1 level things, like reciting facts and knowing those things, I think those will be increasingly less important. And what will be more important are those deeper analytical skills that we can give students to organize their thinking and writing. Let's see. Some people have moved to paper pencil. I think that is cool. I like writing things out by hand. I think that it makes a different connection in your brain than like just, you know, typing things out. But yeah, I don't know. Using it just to fill in the blank and complete the assignment and cheat, you know, like, yeah, we definitely need to get around that. And I think part of that will happen the more in that we empower students. Because what I've seen actually is that when students get to a point where their voice is lost in the writing, they've used AI so much that it doesn't sound like them anymore. They get very upset about it. They really don't like it. And that's because they're starting to take ownership of their education and they're starting to be more confident in the thoughts that they are having. And I think that's kind of the ultimate solution. It's a huge cultural shift. It's not going to happen overnight, but that is what I'm pushing towards, of like, no, your voice is valuable Don't let a machine stand in front of you and you say what you want to say. Use the machine to help you say it. Permissions are a problem, 100% from Gary. For me, the reason I get to use Claude so much is my college model. In the college model, parents actually have to sign a waiver to do college level work. So I am able to get away with using Claude with students because Claude is 18 plus. However, Pi and Gemini are both 13 plus, and Gemini is only 18 plus on school accounts though. And I actually talked to the people at Google about this because they were like, no, it's 13 plus. And I'm like, no, it's not. Like, and so I think they're looking for a solution for that so that students will be able to use Gemini on their school devices. The permissions thing is something that we're still working out. And in terms of data collection, that's a thing that like Conmigo doesn't actually save any of that data and use it to train the model. So that is something to be thinking about, that the data that you're inputting into it, whether or not that company that uses that model has the framework like for collecting that data or not. And I know that Conmigo does not. Anything put into the model is not used to train the model. They don't save that. So I think that's where educational models are going to move. All right. Yeah, and it does depend on what you're using the essay for and what the goal is. And my goal is always trying to get to higher order thinking. Like as soon as I can do that, that's what's exciting to me. I really want to be able to have some of those deeper conversations, you know, almost like you would have in a college level seminar. And AI in some ways makes that possible. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Cara and Stephanie, everyone in the chat. I really appreciate you. And yeah, definitely make sure you have this link. It will force a copy of the whole presentation. There are so many links and tools in there that you can grab. And this was super fun. Thank you so much for coming to this conference. This is awesome. I'm glad you're here. Oh, that's so sweet. Thank you. Someone said my students are lucky to have me. They are stoked.